Admiral Kethvar of the Galactic Council had seen many impossible things in his 300 years of service. He had witnessed the birth of stars and the collapse of civilizations. He had negotiated peace between species that had been at war for millennia. But nothing, absolutely nothing, had prepared him for what now filled his command screen. The long-range sensors aboard his flagship, the Eternal Vigil, were detecting something that shouldn't exist. The readings were so unprecedented that his science officer had run the scans 17 times, each result identical to the last. A massive fleet was approaching the outer rim of known space, moving at speeds that defied every law of physics the Council understood. "Sir, the formation is holding steady at 0.73 light speed," reported Lieutenant Commander Zeph, her tentacles trembling as she operated the sensor array. "The energy signatures are unlike anything in our databases." Admiral Kethvar's 4 eyes narrowed as he studied the holographic display. The approaching vessels were arranged in perfect geometric patterns, their hulls gleaming with an unknown metallic substance that seemed to bend light around it. What troubled him most wasn't their size or their speed. It was that they had appeared from a sector of space that was supposed to be empty. For the past 800 years, the Galactic Council had maintained detailed maps of every inhabited system within 50,000 light-years. They knew where every species lived, what technologies they possessed, and what threats they might pose. The sector these ships had emerged from was designated as Zone Null, a region of dead space containing nothing but cosmic dust and the remnants of ancient supernovas. "Communications Officer Realm. Open a channel to the Council chambers on Nexus Prime," Kethvar commanded, his voice carrying the weight of authority that had earned him his rank. Priority 1, Classification. The holographic form of Council Speaker Vorth materialized before him, the elderly Zentorian scales shifting from blue to concerned purple. "Admiral, your transmission carries emergency protocols. What is the situation?" "Speaker Vorth, we had detected an unknown fleet of significant size approaching from Zone Null. The vessels display technology far beyond our current understanding. I'm transmitting our sensor data now." Vorth's large eyes widened as the data streamed across her personal display. "This cannot be accurate, Admiral. Our surveys of that sector are comprehensive. No civilization exists there, advanced or otherwise. Nevertheless, Speaker, they are real and they're moving toward inhabited space. My tactical analysis suggests they could reach the outer colonies within 72 standard hours." The implications hung in the space between them like a gathering storm. The Galactic Council had been the supreme authority in this part of the galaxy for over a millennium. They had absorbed or eliminated every potential threat, bringing peace and order to countless worlds. The idea that an unknown force could simply appear with technology that surpassed their own was more than unlikely. It was terrifying. "Admiral, I'm convening an emergency session of the full Council. Maintain your position and continue monitoring, but do not engage. We need to understand what we're dealing with before any action is taken." As the transmission ended, Kethvar felt a chill run through his exoskeleton. In all his years of service, he had never heard uncertainty in Speaker Vorth's voice. She was known throughout the galaxy as unflappable, a leader who could find solutions to any crisis. But the data they were reviewing challenged everything the Council believed about their place in the universe. "Sir, we're receiving additional contacts," Zeph announced, her voice barely above a whisper. "The formation is larger than we initially calculated. Current count shows over 3,000 vessels, 3,000 ships. The entire Council fleet numbered barely 800 vessels spread across dozens of systems. Even if they could gather their full military might, they would be outnumbered nearly 4-1 by an enemy about whom they knew nothing. Run a full spectrum analysis on their propulsion systems," Kethvar ordered, "and see if you can determine their point of origin. There has to be some explanation for how they appeared so suddenly." Hours passed as the crew worked frantically to gather intelligence. The more they learned, the more disturbing the picture became. The unknown fleet wasn't just large, it was impossibly advanced. Their ships showed no conventional energy signatures, no plasma trails, no gravitational disturbances that typically accompanied faster-than-light travel. They moved through space as if the very laws of physics bent to their will. Dr. Hines, the ship's chief scientist and one of the few humans serving in the council fleet, approached Kethvar's command chair with a data tablet. The human's face was pale, his usual confidence replaced by something approaching fear. "Admiral, I've completed my analysis of their hull composition. The material they're using doesn't match any known element in our periodic tables. It seems to exist in a state between matter and energy, which explains why our sensors are having difficulty getting clear readings. Is there any indication of their intentions, Doctor?" "That's what concerns me most, sir. Their formation suggests they're not just exploring or migrating. They're arranged in classic invasion patterns, with scout ships forming an advanced screen and what appear to be larger vessels protected in the center of their formation." Kethvar absorbed this information, feeling the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. As one of the Council's most senior admirals, it would fall to him to coordinate any military response. But how do you fight an enemy whose technology makes your weapons look like primitive tools? The communication board chimed, indicating an incoming transmission from the council chambers. This time, the holographic display showed not just Speaker Vorth, but the entire emergency assembly. Representatives from 37 different species, all looking as concerned as their various anatomies would allow. "Admiral Kethvar," Speaker Vorth began, her voice carrying across the chamber's acoustics. "The Council has reviewed your data and reached a preliminary decision. We are dispatching additional fleets to your position, but they will not arrive for several days. In the meantime, you are authorized to attempt diplomatic contact with the unknown vessels. Speaker, with respect, we have no idea what we're dealing with. They could interpret any communication as an act of aggression. The risk must be taken, Admiral. If these beings possess the technology your reports suggest, military action would be futile. Our only hope is to convince them that the Council represents no threat to their interests." Councillor Thrix of the Valdorian Empire leaned forward, his metallic features gleaming under the chamber's lighting. "Admiral, our analysis suggests these vessels originated from beyond the galactic rim. If that's true, they've traveled distances that should be impossible, even with our most advanced technology. We need to know what they want." As the council debate continued, Kethvar found himself studying the tactical display more carefully. There was something about the unknown fleet's movement patterns that nagged at him, a familiarity he couldn't quite place. They moved with purpose, yes, but also with a peculiar efficiency that reminded him of something. "Dr. Hines," he called quietly, not wanting to interrupt the council transmission. "These movement patterns, do they remind you of anything specific?" The human scientist studied the display, his brow furrowed in concentration. "Actually, sir, they do. But it's impossible." "Explain." "The tactical formations, the spacing between vessels, even the way they're maintaining their relative positions. It all follows principles outlined in theoretical military texts from my homeworld. Specifically, from human strategic doctrine developed during our species' early space expansion period." Kethvar felt his blood chill. Humanity had been contacted by the Council over 2 centuries ago, when they were still struggling to establish colonies beyond their home system. They had been categorized as a minor species with limited technological potential, suitable for basic integration into Council society, but not considered capable of significant advancement. The idea that humans might have developed this level of technology in secret was absurd. The Council maintained monitoring stations throughout human space. Any major technological breakthrough would have been detected and reported immediately. "Doctor, that's quite impossible. Human technology is barely adequate for interplanetary travel, let alone what we're observing here." "I know how it sounds, sir, but the patterns are unmistakable. Either someone has been studying human military theory very carefully, or what, Doctor?" Dr. Hines hesitated, clearly uncomfortable with the implications of his own analysis. "Or these are human ships, Admiral. And somehow, humanity has been hiding capabilities far beyond what the Council believed possible." The silence on the bridge of the Eternal Vigil stretched for several heartbeats after Dr. Hines spoke his impossible conclusion. Admiral Kethvar's tactical mind immediately began analyzing the implications, and none of them were pleasant. If humans had developed this level of technology in secret, it meant the Council had been catastrophically wrong about their capabilities for over 2 centuries. "Communications, patch me through to Earth Central Command immediately," Kethvar ordered, his voice steady despite the growing uncertainty in his chest. Lieutenant Commander Zeph's tentacles danced across her console before she looked up with confusion written across her features. Sir, I'm not getting any response from Earth Central. In fact, I'm reading no communications traffic from the Sol system at all. What do you mean, no traffic? Earth generates thousands of communications daily. That's just it, sir. According to our sensors, the entire Sol system appears to be empty. No energy signatures, no orbital installations, nothing. It's as if the entire human civilization simply vanished. Dr. Hines stepped closer to the sensor station, his face growing paler by the moment. Admiral, permission to run a deep space scan of human colonial territories? Granted. Do it quickly. As the enhanced sensors swept across known human space, the results painted an increasingly disturbing picture. Proxima Centauri, Wolf 359, Barnard Star. Every human colony the Council had cataloged was showing the same result. Empty. Not destroyed, not abandoned, but completely absent of any technological signatures. Sir, Zeph reported, her voice barely above a whisper, I'm detecting something else. The Stellar Cartography Database shows discrepancies in several star systems within human territory. It's as if entire planets have been moved. Moved? That's impossible. You can't move planets. Nevertheless, sir, the gravitational signatures are all wrong. Wolf 359 shows 2 additional planetary bodies that weren't there during our last survey. Proxima Centauri has a completely different orbital configuration. It's like someone has been rearranging entire solar systems. Admiral Kethvar felt his worldview crashing down around him. The Galactic Council prided itself on knowing everything that happened within its sphere of influence. They had monitoring stations, trade agreements, and cultural exchange programs with dozens of species. The idea that an entire civilization could not only vanish but apparently move planets without detection was beyond comprehension. The communication board activated again, this time showing only Speaker Vortha's concerned face. Admiral, we've lost contact with our monitoring station in the Sol system. The automated beacon stopped transmitting 3 days ago. Do you have any information about what might have happened? Speaker, I believe we may be looking at a situation far more complex than we initially thought. All evidence suggests the unknown fleet may be connected to human space, but the humans themselves appear to have vanished completely. That's impossible, Admiral. Our last cultural exchange mission reported normal activity throughout human territory just 2 weeks ago. Dr. Hines approached Kethvar's command chair again, carrying a data slate with new analysis results. Admiral, I've been reviewing the propulsion signatures from the unknown fleet. I think I understand what we're seeing. Explain, Doctor. The energy patterns match theoretical models for something called dimensional fold drives, technology that was proposed by human scientists nearly 50 years ago, but dismissed by Council physicists as impossible. If they actually developed working versions of these systems, it would explain how they could move their entire civilization without being detected. You're saying humans developed the ability to hide entire planets? More than that, sir. If my calculations are correct, they've found a way to shift matter between dimensional layers. They could relocate their entire civilization to a parallel space, one that exists alongside our own, but remains invisible to conventional sensors. The implications hit Kethvar like a physical blow. If humans had developed dimensional technology, they possessed capabilities that made them potentially the most powerful species in the galaxy. The question now was why they were revealing themselves and what their intentions might be. Sir, the unknown fleet is changing course, Zeph announced suddenly. They're no longer heading toward the outer colonies. Their new trajectory will bring them directly to us. The main display updated to show the massive formation adjusting its path with mathematical precision. 3,000 vessels, each larger than anything in the Council fleet, were now aimed directly at the Eternal Vigil's position. Their approach speed remained constant, giving Kethvar approximately 6 hours to decide how to respond. Open a general broadcast on all frequencies, he ordered. All languages, all communication protocols we have on file. Channel open, sir. Kethvar stood, knowing that the next few minutes might determine the fate of galactic civilization. Unknown vessels. This is Admiral Kethvar of the Galactic Council ship Eternal Vigil. We request immediate communication to discuss your presence in Council space. We mean no harm and seek only peaceful contact. The response came faster than light speed should have allowed, arriving before the transmission could have reached the fleet and returned. The voice that emerged from the speakers was unmistakably human, speaking in perfectly accented galactic standard. Admiral Kethvar, this is Fleet Commander Sarah Chun of the Terran Expeditionary Force. We appreciate your peaceful intentions, but we must inform you that you are currently in violation of Terran territorial boundaries. Please adjust your course to bearing 27 Mark IV and proceed to minimum safe distance. Dr. Hines gripped his data slate so tightly his knuckles went white. Admiral, that's Sarah Chun. She was a junior officer with the Council Science Division 15 years ago. I worked with her on several research projects, but she disappeared during a routine survey mission and was presumed dead. Taran territorial bundarias. Kethvar repeated, his voice carrying a mixture of confusion and growing anger. Commander Chun, this is open space. The Council has maintained navigation charts of this sector for 8 centuries. There are no territorial claims here. Admiral, your charts are outdated. Humanity has established sovereign control over this region of space. We request that you withdraw immediately to avoid any unfortunate misunderstandings. The casual authority in Chen's voice was perhaps more unsettling than the impossible fleet surrounding them. She spoke as if the Galactic Council, the supreme authority in this part of the galaxy for over a millennium, was nothing more than a minor regional government that had wandered into territory that didn't belong to them. Commander Chun, the Galactic Council represents 37 species and maintains jurisdiction over this entire sector. I must ask you to identify the authority under which you claim territorial rights. The pause that followed seemed to stretch for eternity. When Shen's voice returned, there was something new in it. Not hostility exactly, but a kind of patient condescension that made Kethvar's exoskeleton crawl. Admiral, I think there may be some confusion about current political realities. The entity you refer to as the Galactic Council ceased to be the primary governing authority in this region approximately 73 hours ago. All former Council territories have been integrated into the Terran Federation under the Peaceful Transition Protocol. That's impossible. There's been no transition, peaceful or otherwise. The Council maintains full governmental authority throughout. Admiral, Chen interrupted gently. I understand this is difficult to process. Perhaps it would be helpful if I transmitted our updated territorial maps for your review. You'll find that all inhabited systems in your database have been relocated to Federation space for their protection during the transition period. The transmission that followed contained star charts that defied everything Kethvar thought he knew about the galaxy. According to these maps, every inhabited world in Council space had been moved to new locations within what was labeled as Terran Federation territory. Entire civilizations, billions of beings, relocated as casually as pieces on a game board. This is madness, he whispered, staring at the display. You can't move entire civilizations without their consent. You can't simply declare yourself the governing authority over species that never agreed to your rule. Admiral, Chen's voice carried a note of genuine sympathy. I assure you that every relocation was conducted with full consent and cooperation from the affected populations. Many species have found their new homes quite superior to their original locations. Enhanced solar energy, improved mineral resources, more stable orbital mechanics. The Federation has invested considerable effort in ensuring everyone benefits from the transition. Dr. Hines was frantically working at his console, running calculations that seemed to multiply his confusion rather than resolve it. Admiral, according to these charts, Earth isn't shown at Sol anymore. It's located in a system that our databases show as uninhabitable, a red giant with no planetary bodies. Commander Chun, Kethvar said slowly, where is Earth? Earth remains at the capital of the Federation, Admiral. We've simply made some improvements to our solar system's efficiency. Sol was always rather poorly designed for supporting a galactic civilization. The casual way she mentioned improving an entire star system sent chills through everyone on the bridge. The technology required to manipulate stellar bodies was so far beyond anything the Council understood that it might as well have been magic. Commander, I need to speak with my superiors before proceeding further. Will you grant us time to consult with Council leadership? Of course, Admiral. But I should mention that Council leadership is currently in negotiations with Federation representatives on New Geneva. The talks have been quite productive. I believe Speaker Vorth has been particularly impressed with our infrastructure improvements. Keth Var felt the last pieces of his understanding crumble. Speaker Vorth was on his ship's communication logs from just hours ago. When did these negotiations begin, Commander? Oh, they've been ongoing for several weeks now. I believe the formal surrender documents were signed yesterday, though I understand there are still some minor details being worked out regarding integration procedures. Admiral Keth Var's command deck fell into stunned silence as the implications of Commander Chen's words sank in. Surrender documents. Signed yesterday. But he had been in direct communication with Speaker Vorth just hours ago, and she had made no mention of any negotiations, let alone surrender. Dr. Hines, check our communication logs, Keth Var ordered, his voice tight with growing dread. Verify the timestamps on all transmissions from Council leadership. The human scientist's fingers flew over his console, pulling up communication records and cross-referencing them with the ship's internal chronometer. What he found made his face go ashen. Admiral, this is impossible. According to our logs, we received transmissions from Speaker Vorth 3 hours ago, but the encryption signatures indicate those messages originated from this location, from Commander Chen's fleet. You're saying the communications were faked? Not faked, sir. More like redirected. It appears our transmissions were intercepted, processed, and responded to by artificial intelligence systems designed to perfectly mimic Council leadership. We never actually spoke to the real Speaker Vorth. The bridge crew exchanged horrified glances. If the humans could intercept and forge communications with such precision that even their most sophisticated detection systems couldn't tell the difference, then nothing they thought they knew about the situation could be trusted. Commander Chun, Keth Var said, trying to keep his voice steady, I'm having difficulty verifying some of the information you've provided. Could you clarify the current status of Council leadership? Certainly, Admiral. All Council representatives are safe and comfortable in their new accommodations on New Geneva. Would you like me to arrange a direct communication link? I'm sure Speaker Vorth would be happy to discuss the transition details with you personally. Yes, immediately. The holographic display activated, and Speaker Vorth's familiar form appeared before them. But something was wrong. Her scales showed the calm blue of contentment rather than the stressed purples or alarmed reds that should have accompanied such a momentous situation. Her posture was relaxed, almost casual. Admiral Keth Var, I'm pleased to see you're well. I trust Commander Chun has been explaining the new arrangements. Speaker, what is the meaning of this? Hours ago, you were ordering me to maintain position and gather intelligence. Now I'm told the Council has surrendered to human forces. Vorth's expression showed genuine confusion. Admiral, I'm not sure what you mean. The integration process has been underway for weeks. Your orders were to facilitate the peaceful transition of your sector to Federation authority. Perhaps there's been some miscommunication. Dr. Hines leaned close to Keth Var's chair and whispered urgently, Admiral, look at her eyes. The micro-expressions, the way she holds her head. This isn't the real Speaker Vorth. This is an incredibly sophisticated simulation. Speaker, Keth Var said carefully, what was the last thing we discussed during our private communication 3 hours ago? I'm sorry, Admiral, but I don't recall any recent private communications. Are you feeling well? Perhaps the stress of the transition is affecting your memory. The Federation has excellent medical facilities if you need treatment. The concern in her voice was perfectly genuine, which made it all the more unsettling. Either this was the most advanced artificial intelligence in galactic history, or something had happened to the real Speaker Vorth that made her completely forget recent events. Commander Chun, Keth Var said, ending the transmission with Vorth, I need to understand exactly what has happened to the Galaxy Council and its member species. Admiral, I think it would be easier if I showed you rather than trying to explain. Would you permit a small delegation from my ship to board yours? I believe visual demonstration will clarify many of your concerns. Every instinct Keth Var had developed over 3 centuries of military service screamed against allowing unknown beings onto his ship. But the alternative was sitting in space, surrounded by a fleet that could apparently manipulate reality itself, waiting for them to decide his fate. Very well, Commander. You may transport aboard with 2 companions. But Understand that any hostile action will be met with immediate response. Of course, Admiral. We'll be with you momentarily. The words had barely left Chen's lips when three figures materialized on the bridge without any visible transportation technology. One moment the space was empty. The next moment Commander Chen stood there alongside two other humans, all wearing uniforms that seemed to be made of the same reality-bending material as their ships. Chen appeared to be in her 40s, with graying hair and the confident bearing of someone accustomed to command. But what struck Kethvar most was her eyes. They held depths that suggested experiences far beyond what any human should have been capable of accumulating. Admiral Kethvar, it's an honor to meet you in person. Your reputation as a fair and honorable commander precedes you. She gestured to her companions. This is Dr. Marcus Webb, our Chief Science Officer, and Captain Lisa Nakamura, Head of Integration Services. Dr. Webb stepped forward, carrying a device that looked like a simple tablet, but hummed with barely contained energy. Admiral, with your permission, I'd like to show you what's actually happened to the galaxy over the past several weeks. The device projected a three-dimensional map of local space, but not as Kethvar had ever seen it before. Instead of the familiar star charts, this display showed layers upon layers of reality, each containing different configurations of the same space. What you're seeing, Dr. Webb explained, is a multidimensional representation of this region. Each layer represents a different probability state, a different version of how events could have unfolded. The display zoomed in on the Galactic Council territories, showing familiar worlds and installations. But then other layers became visible, showing the same space occupied by different realities. In some layers, the Council still existed as it always had. In others, various alien species had achieved technological breakthroughs that changed the balance of power. And in one particular layer, humanity had developed capabilities that made them the dominant force in the galaxy. The layer you're currently experiencing, Captain Nakamura explained, is one where humanity discovered how to navigate between these different probability states. We found versions of ourselves that had developed technologies far beyond what you know us to be capable of. More importantly, we found ways to selectively merge beneficial aspects from different realities. You're talking about manipulating the fundamental nature of existence itself, Kethvar said, his voice barely above a whisper. In a sense, yes, Chen replied. But we're not destroyers, Admiral. Everything we've done has been designed to create the best possible outcome for all sentient species. The Council species haven't been conquered. They've been relocated to versions of their homeworlds that are superior in every measurable way. Dr. Webb manipulated the display to show specific worlds. Kethvar could see his own homeworld of Keth Prime, but not as he remembered it. This version had richer mineral deposits, more stable weather patterns, and orbital mechanics that provided optimal energy distribution across the planet's surface. Your people are thriving, Admiral, Dr. Webb continued. Crime rates are down, life expectancy is up, and they have access to technologies that have solved most of their environmental and social problems. The same is true for every species that was part of the old council. But at what cost? Kethvar demanded. You've fundamentally altered reality without consent. You've made decisions for entire civilizations without asking if they wanted these changes. Admiral, Captain Nakamura said gently, we did ask, just not the versions of those civilizations you're familiar with. In every reality we've merged, we secured full consent from the populations involved. The only people who might object are those who held power under the old system and who might lose some of their authority in a more equitable arrangement. The truth hit Kethvar like a physical blow. He wasn't just dealing with humans who had developed advanced technology. He was confronting beings who could rewrite the fundamental nature of existence itself, who could choose which version of reality everyone else got to live in. What happened to the real Speaker Vorth? He asked. She's exactly where I said she is, Chen replied. On New Geneva, in comfortable quarters, working with our integration specialist to ensure the smoothest possible transition for her people. The Speaker Vorth you spoke with earlier is also real. She's the version from a reality where the integration process began weeks ago instead of days ago. Her memories are genuine, just from a different timeline. And which timeline am I from? Chen's expression grew sympathetic. You're from the original timeline, Admiral. the one where humanity was still considered a minor species with limited potential. We needed someone from that reality to serve as a bridge, to help us understand how the transition might affect those who remember the old way of things. Dr. Hines, who had been listening in stunned silence, finally found his voice. Commander Chun, I worked with you 15 years ago. You were brilliant, but you were still bound by the same physical laws as the rest of us. How is this possible? Chin turned to him with a smile that held both warmth and infinite sadness. Hello, Marcus. Yes, you and I worked together in the old reality. But 15 years ago, my research team made contact with versions of humanity from alternate timelines where our species had developed very differently. We learned that in most realities, humans eventually develop technologies that make us capable of protecting and improving life throughout the galaxy. We simply accelerated the process. You're not really Sarah Chun, are you? Dr. Hines asked quietly. I am and I'm not, she replied. I have her memories, her personality, her genuine care for scientific advancement. But I also have the memories and knowledge of dozens of other versions of myself from realities where humanity achieved things you can't imagine. I am Sarah Chun, but I'm also much more than the person you knew. Admiral Kethvar felt the last of his certainties crumble. These weren't conquerors in any traditional sense. They were beings who had transcended the normal limitations of existence itself, who could cherry-pick the best possible outcomes from infinite possibilities and make them real. The question that remained was whether this represented salvation or the most subtle form of tyranny imaginable. What happens now, he asked. Now, Chun said, you get to choose which reality you want to live in, Admiral. We can return you to a timeline where the integration never happened, where the Council continues to exist as it always has. Or you can join us in building something better, a galaxy where every species thrives, where conflict is unnecessary because there's enough of everything for everyone, where the problems that have plagued civilization for millennia have been solved. And if I choose to resist, then you resist, Chin said simply. We won't force you to accept this reality. But I should warn you, the version of the galaxy you're trying to preserve was never as stable as you thought. In most timelines, the old council system eventually leads to war, famine, and the extinction of several member species. We're offering something better. Admiral Kethvar stood in his command center, surrounded by the impossible reality that humans had casually rewritten the fundamental nature of existence. The three human delegates waited patiently as he processed the magnitude of what they were offering and what it truly meant for free will in the galaxy. Show me, he said finally. Show me what you've done to the member worlds. Dr. Webb nodded and adjusted his device. The holographic display expanded, filling the entire bridge with a three-dimensional representation of former council space. But instead of the familiar stellar arrangements, Kethvar saw something that defied everything he understood about orbital mechanics and stellar engineering. Where the planet Keth Prime had once orbited a single yellow star, now it existed in a binary system with perfectly balanced stellar radiation. The planet itself was larger, with additional land masses that had never existed before. Cities sprawled across continents in geometric patterns that suggested both advanced technology and aesthetic beauty beyond anything his species had achieved. Your homeworld population has increased by 40%, Captain Nakamura explained, but resource consumption has decreased by 60%. We introduced technologies that make energy conversion nearly 100% efficient, and terraforming techniques that have added 17% more habitable surface area. The display shifted to show other worlds. The water planet of Aquaticus, home to the dolphin-like cetaceans, now had 3 moons instead of 1, creating tidal patterns that had increased the planet's bioproductivity exponentially. The desert world of Eridus had been given a companion planet rich in water and vegetation, connected by a space elevator that allowed easy resource sharing. Each improvement was elegant, logical, and completely unprecedented in its scope. The humans hadn't just relocated these worlds, they had redesigned them to be perfect for their inhabitants. The Crystalline Collective, Dr. Webb continued, showing a cluster of silicon-based life forms' homeworld, expressed concerns about the energy inefficiency of their old star. We provided them with a neutron star specifically calibrated to emit the exact frequency of radiation their crystal matrix requires for optimal growth. Their civilization has advanced more in the past month than in the previous 1,000 years. Dr. Hines was studying his scanner readings with growing amazement. Admiral, the energy signatures from these modified systems are impossible. The amount of power required to move planets, let alone redesign stellar configurations, should require the output of entire galactic cores. How are they doing this? Commander Chen gestured, and suddenly, the bridge was filled with additional figures, dozens of other humans, each wearing similar reality-bending uniforms, each with the same depths of experience in their eyes. We're not doing it alone, Marcus. Every major technological breakthrough humanity has achieved in any reality is shared among all versions of our species across the dimensional barriers. We have the collective knowledge and capability of humanity from millions of different timelines. One of the new arrivals, a woman who appeared to be in her 60s, stepped forward. I'm Dr. Elena Vasquez, from a timeline where humans achieved dimensional transcendence 2,000 years ago. In my reality, we learned to harness the energy differential between quantum probability states. What you're seeing isn't just advanced technology. It's the application of physics principles that exist beyond your current understanding of dimensional limitations. Admiral Kethvar felt overwhelmed by the implications. You're saying that across infinite realities, humans always develop these capabilities? Not always, Chen replied honestly. In some timelines, humanity destroys itself. In others, we stagnate and never advance beyond our home system. But in the vast majority of realities where we survive and thrive, we eventually develop the ability to transcend normal physical limitations. And in all of those realities, we reach the same conclusion, that our greatest purpose is to protect and improve life wherever we find it. But why? Kethvar demanded. Why do you care what happens to other species? What do you gain from this intervention? The question hung in the air for a moment before Dr. Vasquez answered. Admiral, when you can see across infinite realities, you begin to understand something profound about the nature of existence. Every species, every individual consciousness, represents a unique perspective on what life can become. When a species dies out, when a civilization falls, that perspective is lost forever across all realities. We've seen what the galaxy becomes when diversity is lost, when only the most aggressive species survive. It's empty. Captain Nakamura activated her own device, showing Kethvar visions of timeline where the Council had fallen to internal conflict. He saw worlds burned to ash, entire species reduced to scattered refugees, vast regions of space left lifeless and cold. In 73% of realities where we don't intervene, the current Council system leads to total war within 50 years. The survival rate for member species drops to less than 30%. You're saying you had to take over to prevent war? We're saying we chose to offer a better alternative, Chen corrected. Admiral, every species in our integrated territories had the choice to accept our assistance or remain in their original reality. Those who chose integration did so because they could see the benefits for themselves. Dr. Hines was studying readings from his scanner with increasing confusion. Commander, I'm detecting quantum signatures that suggest this entire conversation is taking place in a localized pocket of altered space-time. Are we still in normal reality? Define normal, Dr. Webb replied with a slight smile. Reality is far more flexible than most species realize. Right now, we're in a conversation bubble that exists parallel to your ship's normal time stream. We could talk for days here, and only minutes would pass in the outside universe. It allows for proper discussion without the pressure of immediate decisions. The revelation that they were speaking in a modified pocket of reality drove home just how far beyond normal limitations these beings have progressed. They could manipulate time, space, matter, and apparently consciousness itself with casual ease. What about the species that refused integration? Kethvar asked. They continue to exist exactly as they always have, Chen replied. In their original realities, with their original challenges and opportunities. We don't force change on anyone, Admiral. But we also don't allow those who choose change to suffer because of the decisions of those who don't. The moral complexity of the situation was staggering. How do you judge beings who could rewrite reality when they claimed to only use that power to help? How do you resist when resistance meant condemning your people to inferior conditions? Admiral, said Captain Nakamura, would you like to speak with some of the council members who chose integration? Not simulations or alternate versions, but the actual individuals from your original timeline who decided to accept our offer. Before Kethvar could respond, several new holographic figures appeared on the bridge. He recognized them immediately. Admiral Zorax of the Reptilian Fleet, Council Member Threek from the Insectoid Hives, and, most shocking of all, his own second-in-command from the previous year, Commander Vexhai. Admiral Kethvar. Commander Vexhai said, her familiar voice filled with enthusiasm he had rarely heard before. I was hoping you would be among the first to see what we've accomplished. Vexhai, what are you doing here? You're supposed to be commanding the Outer Rim Patrol. I was, sir, until I was contacted by Federation representatives and offered the chance to see what they could do for our people. Admiral, they've solved the resource shortage on Keth Prime. My family now lives in a city with perfect weather control, unlimited clean energy, and educational systems that have advanced our young beyond anything we thought possible. Admiral Zorax leaned forward, his reptilian features animated with excitement. Kethvar, my old friend, they've eliminated the plague that was killing my people. Not just treated it, eliminated it completely. My species has gone from facing potential extinction to having a longer average lifespan than humans. And they ask for nothing in return except that we share our knowledge freely with other species. Nothing in return? Kethvar asked suspiciously. There must be conditions, requirements. Only one. Council Member Threek buzzed, his compound eyes gleaming. That we commit to non-aggression and cooperation with other species. The Federation has made war essentially pointless, Admiral. When every world has unlimited resources, when every species has access to technologies that solve their basic survival needs, what is there to fight over? The logic was inescapable, but something about it still troubled Kethvar. And what happens to those who choose not to cooperate? What happens to species that want to maintain their independence? Commander Chin's expression grew serious. We monitor them, Admiral, not to control them, but to ensure they don't pose a threat to species that have chosen peaceful cooperation. If a non-integrated species develops weapons capable of threatening integrated worlds, we intervene. But only to the extent necessary to prevent harm. You're talking about becoming the ultimate authority over who lives and dies in the galaxy. We're talking about preventing genocide, Admiral. In our experience, species that reject integration typically do so because they benefit from systems that exploit or oppress others. We don't allow that exploitation to continue when we have the power to stop it. Dr. Hines looked up from his scanner with an expression of scientific wonder mixed with deep concern. Commander, I'm detecting probability cascades extending in all directions from this conversation. It's as if the decisions made here will affect the development of multiple timelines simultaneously. That's correct, Dr. Vasquez confirmed. This conversation exists at a nexus point where multiple realities intersect. The choice Admiral Kethvar makes here will determine not just his own fate, but the fate of several versions of his civilization across different timelines. The weight of cosmic responsibility settled on Kethvar's shoulders. He wasn't just choosing for himself, or even for his own timeline. His decision would echo across multiple realities, affecting versions of his species and civilization that he would never meet. Why me, he asked. Why is my choice so important? Because, Chun said softly, in every timeline where the integration process succeeds completely, it begins with a single moment when someone like you, someone with authority, honor, and genuine care for their people, chooses to trust us despite their fears. Your decision becomes the template that other leaders follow. And in timelines where integration fails, war, Admiral Zorax said grimly. Massive, destructive war that leaves most species extinct and the survivors struggling for basic survival. We've seen it happen, Kethvar. We've seen what the galaxy becomes when fear overcomes wisdom. Admiral Kethvar closed his eyes and tried to think clearly. Every instinct developed over 3 centuries of military service told him that no one should have this much power, that beings capable of rewriting reality couldn't be trusted no matter how benevolent they claimed to be. But the evidence before him was overwhelming. Worlds improved beyond imagination. species thriving like never before, and the promise of a galaxy without war or scarcity. When he opened his eyes, Commander Chun was watching him with infinite patience, as if she had all the time in the universe to wait for his decision, which he realized she probably did. Admiral Kethvar stood at the center of a decision that would reshape not just his reality, but multiple timelines across dimensional space. The weight of infinite possibilities pressed down on him as he considered the choice before him. Trust beings who claimed benevolence while wielding the power of gods, or resist and potentially condemn countless species to war and extinction. "I need to understand something," he said finally, looking directly at Commander Chun. "In all these realities where humanity develops these capabilities, do you always become the dominant species? Are there timelines where other races achieve transcendence first?" Dr. Vasquez smiled and gestured. The holographic display shifted, showing new configurations of space where other species had achieved similar technological breakthroughs. "Admiral, we're part of a larger collective. In some realities, the crystalline collective discovered dimensional manipulation first. In others, it was the cetaceans or even the energy beings from the Vega system. The important thing isn't which species leads, it's that someone develops the wisdom to use these capabilities responsibly." "Show me," Kethvar demanded. The display transformed, revealing a vast network connecting billions of realities. In each one, different species had achieved transcendence, but they all followed the same pattern, using their advanced capabilities to protect and improve life rather than dominate it. Humans were just one node in an infinite web of civilizations that had learned to put compassion above conquest. "The Federation you've encountered," Captain Nakamura explained, "is actually a multidimensional collective. We coordinate with transcended versions of every major species to ensure the best possible outcomes across all realities. When we intervene in a timeline, it's not as conquerors, but as representatives of the combined wisdom of countless civilizations." Dr. Hines looked up from his scanner, his expression shifting from concern to something approaching awe. "Admiral, I'm detecting quantum signatures from species we've never encountered. The probability matrices show technological contributions from civilizations that exist beyond our current detection capabilities. This isn't human dominance. It's galactic cooperation on a scale we can't even comprehend." Commander Chin nodded. "Marcus, remember our discussions about the Fermi paradox 15 years ago? Where are all the advanced civilizations? We found them. They exist in the spaces between realities, working to guide younger species toward prosperity rather than destruction. What you're seeing is graduation day for this region of space." "Graduation?" Admiral Kethvar asked. "Every species reaches a point where they must choose between wisdom and power, between cooperation and domination," Dr. Vasquez explained. The Galactic Council was approaching that decision point. In most timelines, they choose poorly and the results are catastrophic. We're offering a way to skip the catastrophe and move directly to the benefits of transcended civilization. The display showed timeline after timeline where the council system eventually collapsed into war. Kethvar watched his own species fighting desperately for survival as resources dwindled and conflict escalated. He saw the cetaceans' water worlds boiled dry by orbital bombardment, the crystalline collective shattered by weapons that disrupted their quantum matrices, entire regions of space left barren and lifeless. "In the timelines where we don't intervene," Commander Chun said softly, "your species has a survival rate of approximately 12%. Most member species of the Council fare worse. And in timelines where you do intervene, 100% survival rate, with quality of life improvements that exceed what most species thought possible." The mathematics of the situation were overwhelming. Resist integration and condemn billions to potential death and suffering. Accept integration and surrender the illusion of independence in exchange for prosperity beyond imagination. But there was still one question that troubled him. What happens to individual choice? To the right of people to make their own mistakes, live their own lives without intervention from transcended beings. "That's the beauty of multidimensional reality," Captain Nakamura replied. "Individual choice doesn't disappear, it multiplies. Every person who wants to live in a reality without intervention can do so. Every being who chooses challenge over comfort, struggle over ease, can find a timeline that provides exactly that experience. We're not eliminating choice. We're making sure every choice becomes available. Dr. Webb manipulated his device again, showing Kethvar the personal level of what integration meant. He saw versions of his own crew living in different realities. Some had chosen worlds of perpetual challenge where they could test themselves against genuine adversity. Others had chosen peaceful worlds where they could focus on art, science, and philosophy. A few had chosen to become explorers of the dimensional barriers themselves, seeking new realities and new possibilities. "Admiral," said Commander Vex-High, "I chose integration because it meant my children could grow up in a universe where their potential isn't limited by the accident of what resources their birth planet happened to possess. They can become anything they can imagine, explore any path that calls to them. How is that not a better form of freedom?" Admiral Zorax leaned forward. "Kethvar, I've seen my people develop technologies in the past month that we would never have achieved in 1,000 years under the old system. We're not just surviving anymore. We're contributing to something magnificent. Every day, our scientists work alongside beings from dimensions we didn't know existed, solving problems we didn't know could be solved." Council member Threek's compound eyes glittered with excitement. "The Hive has achieved perfect coordination not just within our own species, but with every other integrated civilization. We share knowledge and resources instantly across dimensional barriers. Individual colonies that once struggled for basic survival now have access to the accumulated wisdom of infinite realities." The testimonials painted a picture of existence elevated beyond anything Kethvar had thought possible. But still, something in his military training rebelled against surrendering authority to anyone, no matter how benevolent their intentions. "What safeguards exist?" he asked. "What prevents the Federation from eventually becoming corrupt, from using this power for domination rather than protection?" "The same thing that prevents any transcended civilization from becoming corrupt," Dr. Vasquez replied. "When you can see across infinite realities, you understand the ultimate consequences of every action. Corruption and domination always lead to entropy and collapse. Cooperation and compassion lead to infinite growth and prosperity. The mathematics of morality become obvious when you have sufficient data." Commander Chin stepped closer, her expression serious but kind. "Admiral, I understand your concerns because I shared them once. The Sarah Chun you knew 15 years ago would have been terrified by what we're offering. But fear of power is only useful when power is limited. When power is infinite, as it is across dimensional barriers, the only logical choice is to use it for the greatest good. And you're certain you know what that good is?" "We know what it isn't," Chin replied. "We've seen the timelines where species cling to independence at the cost of extinction. We've seen realities where the strong dominate the weak until nothing remains but ash and regret. We're offering an alternative that has been tested across millions of realities and proven to work." Admiral Kethvar looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. Dr. Hines watched him with scientific curiosity, eager to explore the possibilities the humans offered. Lieutenant Commander Zeph's tentacles trembled with excitement as she processed the technical implications of Federation technology. Even his most conservative officers seemed intrigued by the prospect of worlds without scarcity or conflict. "If I agree to integration," he said slowly, "what happens to the versions of my people who might prefer the old system?" "They continue to exist in realities where the old system persists," Captain Nakamura assured him. "Integration doesn't erase alternatives. It adds new possibilities. Your species will exist across multiple timelines, with every individual able to choose the reality that suits their preferences. And if I refuse, then you return to your original timeline, and events proceed as they would have without our intervention." In approximately 47 years, the Council system experiences cascading failures that lead to galactic war. Some species survive. Many don't. But the choice will have been yours to make. The brutal honesty of the statement hit Kethvar like a physical blow. Refuse their offer and watch his civilization slowly destroy itself. Accept their offer and surrender the independence his species had fought for millennia to achieve. But was independence worth more than survival? Was the right to make mistakes more valuable than the opportunity to transcend limitations that had plagued civilized beings since the dawn of consciousness. He thought of his homeworld, of the children who would grow up in either a galaxy of infinite possibility or one of increasing scarcity and conflict. He thought of the scientific discoveries that could be made with access to knowledge from multiple realities, the artistic achievements possible when survival was no longer a concern, the spiritual growth that might come from understanding existence on a multidimensional scale. Dr. Hines, he said quietly, in your scientific opinion, is what they're offering real? The human scientist looked at his readings one more time, then met his admiral's eyes. Sir, every measurement I could take confirms their capabilities. The energy signatures, the dimensional manipulations, the probability cascades, it's all genuine. They possess technology that makes our understanding of physics look like a child's drawings compared to advanced mathematics. Admiral Kethvar closed his eyes and made his decision. Commander Chun, he said, opening his eyes to look directly at her, I accept integration for my timeline. Not because I trust you completely, but because the alternative leads to consequences I cannot accept. If you betray this trust, if you use your power to oppress rather than liberate, history will judge you harshly across every reality you touch. Chun smiled, and, for a moment, she looked exactly like the young scientist he remembered from Dr. Hines' stories. Admiral, in accepting integration, you're not surrendering to us. You're joining us. Welcome to the Federation. Now, let's build something wonderful together. The reality around them began to shift as dimensional barriers dissolved and reformed. Through the viewports, Kethvar could see his fleet transforming, upgrading itself with technologies that made matter and energy dance to the commands of conscious will. In the distance, he could see worlds repositioning themselves in optimal configurations, species meeting each other for the first time across dimensional space, and the birth of a civilization that spanned infinite realities. The galaxy had indeed stood frozen at the moment of decision, but now it moved forward, carrying every species toward possibilities that no single reality could have contained. And at the center of it all, humanity served not as conquerors, but as guides, helping the universe itself evolve beyond the limitations of ordinary existence. The age of scarcity was ending. The age of transcendence had begun.